Say you've got some time to kill. Sounds unlikely for many of you, I know, but where would you go? What if you wanted to do some browsing that didn't involve a computer? Well, we're going to visit one of the best places in Alabama for browsing, a mecca for anybody interested in Alabama history and stories. And there's no agenda, no plan, so put aside your day timer. We're just going to explore and see what we find. And I've asked some experts to join us on this adventure. Welcome to the Linn-Henley Research Library in Birmingham, Alabama. This old library. This old library is just a stone's throw from this new library. Linn-Henley is the home of the Birmingham Public Library's special collections. There are hundreds of thousands of books, documents, and photographs here. But the building makes the first impression. The main reading room features a mural with 16 scenes from some of the world's greatest stories. The mural was created in 1929 when the Linn-Henley Library was constructed to serve as the city's main library. John Bertalin knows these images intimately. In 1983, he led a small team up on scaffolding to clean the mural one Q-tip at a time. So this isn't the first time you've been looking down on somebody from a perch in this room?
No, it isn't. Often we look down on everyone sort of gathered around us as we spent 18 months on scaffolding cleaning. It's interesting, people tend to forget you're there. The scaffolding tends to bleed into the background, and when you're up there, it's only when you make a sharp noise that someone realizes that someone is up there. But normally we're not on scaffolding. Normally we work in front of a painting.
And you never closed the library here. It was open for business while you worked on the restoration.
That's right. We were on scaffolding that went from floor to ceiling and with internal stairs, so it was safe to be able to leave that open like that. And with the exception of the outriggers, which were a little bit of a problem, we pretty much kept everything moving for 18 months here.
This is certainly one of the most striking public rooms in Alabama, largely because of the murals.
Yes, exactly. It's very important because I tend to think of murals like this as the equivalent of stained glass windows. They're a visual and graphic way of portraying what is in the library and what's available to the individual and what things were important throughout history and important for the library in terms of its holdings. So it was used to teach as much as a stained glass window in a cathedral was used to teach. Conservation is really only about two things. It's sticking together things which should stick but don't, and unsticking things which have stuck but shouldn't. And this cleaning procedure is very much a matter of unsticking things that have stuck but shouldn't. So we're able to determine where the stable paint layer is and what the artist delivered to the wall here to install. And we knew that our cleaning would be done when we got down to that layer.
How big an area were you working on at a time?
Oh, we try to do about 2 feet at a time, but we do 2 feet at a time with swabs. And we use giant swabs in this case, but cotton swabs about the size of my thumb.
What kind of sense do you get when you walk in now and see the restored mural?
Well, I feel real proud, and I can't believe that this mural is so big. I can't believe that we had the nerve to stand on scaffolding all that time to do that cleaning and sort of take it down and move it. And it really was an awful lot of work. And it's a good feeling to see how bright it is and how many people who know this mural, who are adults now and were children when the mural was first installed, say they're really very proud that the mural is in such good shape and that it's now, they remember it today the way they remembered it as a child.
These murals were painted by Ezra Winter, whom Bertalin suspects immortalized himself as Sancho Panza. Hundreds of murals were created during the Depression in public places by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a government program that put thousands of people, including artists, to work on public projects. The Linn-Henley mural was not a WPA project, but the ceiling was. Everybody talks about the murals, but equally astonishing, I think, is the treatment of the ceiling in here. It's perhaps even more intricate.
The ceiling was originally done by the WPA back in the 30s, but our ceiling had deteriorated so when they did the renovation of the building, Lanny Chapelier came in. He's a local artist. And he traced off the designs, went back to his office, silk screened the designs on the wallpaper, and came in and redid the ceilings totally.
There's another WPA project downstairs that gave a job to a single Alabama artist.
That's one of our most popular items. And it was done in 1942 by a local artist named Hannah Elliott. And she was best known for painting miniature portraits. The map is, I don't know that we'd call it great art, but it's an interesting piece, and it's very much a reflection of its time, especially in the way that the Ku Klux Klan is portrayed as the saviors of white government, and the way Native Americans are portrayed.
Interested in the Klan's inner workings? The Archives has a Klan directory from the 1920s listing the members of this secretive organization. One gentleman gives his address as City Hall. But much has changed. For 3 decades now, City Hall has been the address of African-American mayors. Jonathan Bass is interested in those changes, and the Linn-Henley Archives are indispensable to him. Bass teaches history and political science at Samford University. He's researching Martin Luther King's Letter from Birmingham Jail. Why do you say it's the most important document of the civil rights movement?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons. I think the most important is the fact that black culture is an oral culture, and we're dealing with preachers, and preachers that don't particularly write down a lot of their sermons. So much of what they do is extemporaneous. So I think anytime we have a document from the civil rights movement that is actually composed and written by leaders in the movement, that's when it is something that's very significant for historians.
The letter was written by Martin Luther King upon his arrest, and he was incarcerated in the Birmingham jail. And this is the actual record of that arrest.
Right.
And what does this tell us? So what can you as an historian or somebody researching the movement find out by looking at a record like this?
What you're going to see here is the jail warden or someone that worked for him is taking this information. That's why it's all written in the same handwriting. This isn't Martin Luther King or Ralph Abernathy's signature. And they have violated a court injunction. They have parading without a permit. And what I think is interesting about this is the civil rights movement is such a grassroots movement. It's grassroots volunteers. And if you look through this, you see the names of 50 some odd people. And Ralph Abernathy and Martin Luther King, which are on the other page, are the only two outsiders, and outsiders in the sense that they are the only two residents, non-residents of Birmingham. They're both listed from Atlanta, Georgia. So all the other folks that we're talking about here, you see they're listed in Huntsville Road, 86th Street North, 16th Avenue Southwest, Alpha Street. They're all local residents that have volunteered to go march with Martin Luther King and get arrested.
A group of white clergymen criticized King, calling the protests unwise and untimely. "For years I have heard the word wait," King wrote. "This wait has almost always meant never." King's letter, said to be written on scraps of paper smuggled out of the jail, no longer exists. Bass's research leads him to believe that while the letter was started in jail, King finished it later, working with his colleagues. So the kind of notion that he writes this, is inspired by this event and writes it in the jail cell is probably not entirely accurate.
Right. It just sort of adds to the legend, I think, and the flavor of it. And as we talked about before, it's very appealing. It was no coincidence that Martin Luther King marched and was arrested on Good Friday. Jesus Christ marched on Good Friday and was crucified. It's no coincidence that Martin Luther King is writing a letter from Birmingham jail. The Apostle Paul writes letters from jail, and he almost always writes his letters, he does always write his letters to other Christians. And so that these 8 white ministers offered the occasion to write this document.
This jail register is among the hundreds of thousands of documents and photographs in the Department of Archives and Manuscripts at Linn-Henley.
Marvin Whiting, who was the first archivist, really sort of single-handedly built a remarkable archives collection here. Marvin was here for 20 years, and the collection of the archives is really a testament in many ways to one person's effort.
Ever check the employee pics when you're in a video? Ever ask the coffee house clerk for her favorite bean? We asked Jim Baggett for a couple of archive pics. He likes the 1871 Elyton Land Survey, the original survey for Birmingham, laid out when all this was cornfields and cattle pastures. And Birmingham's turn-of-the-century Mardi Gras celebration is long gone, except for what was preserved in this old scrapbook.
Yeah, scrapbooks are wonderful things for researchers because they often will pull together a lot of information like newspaper clippings on a subject, but they can just be a nightmare to try and preserve because the books themselves tend to be on very bad paper, very acidic paper that deteriorates fast.
Quick then, before it disintegrates, one more scrapbook and one more expert. Birmingham's Ann George is a best-selling mystery writer. One of her cozies, as they're called, Murder Runs in the Family, is set at the Linn-Henley Library, where George used to work. She's killed lots of people in print. That's why we asked her to investigate this 1920s scrapbook. Jacob Reeves was a politically ambitious streetcar conductor. He aspired to be Birmingham's coroner and held that office briefly. So he kept a scrapbook of suicides, murders, and accidental deaths in the city. Well, Ann, you kind of make a living out of killing people in your mysteries, but you've never killed anybody like this.
No. Woman drowned in water barrel. Miss Lizzie Smith, an elderly white woman, was found dead yesterday morning in a water barrel near her residence.
Now, the coroner thinks she had a heart attack.
Yeah, but she had to be leaning way over to get water from the barrel. Huh. That's interesting.
It's one of these articles that seems to raise more questions than it answers to me.
Yeah, there are a lot of them in here like that.
Some of these stories are outrageous, and other ones are just break your heart, like this one.
The city paid a bounty for sparrow eggs. So this little boy was trying to climb a tree and get them and fell to his death.
And, you know, there's another article in here where a boy was doing that and he came in contact with an electrical wire.
Yeah.
And this says it's the second serious accident within a week, resulting from the youth of the city endeavoring to earn the money paid by the commissioners for birds' eggs.
Yeah, he broke his neck. Huh.
This is the first in a string of articles about this strange incident of shooting on a streetcar.
This is a streetcar from hell that you would not want to be on. This is wild.
And it says here, writing as they did at the time, a Negro man got out of the section reserved for Negroes in the rear of the streetcar and went to sit in the white section and wouldn't move and started shooting. And that makes me wonder, was this just a man tired of subservience, a lifetime of subservience, and
Probably.
just had enough?
Probably.
And so he starts firing, and one of the passengers hands the conductor an automatic, but the conductor, evidently unfamiliar with that class of weapon, struggled to cock it all the time the Negro was shooting at the conductor.
But now, I know it's what's here. This is their version of it, but does it make sense that the guy's up there shooting at the conductor, totally misses the conductor?
Misses him several times.
Misses him several times.
So now it says the streetcar is in an uproar, people are bailing out the windows, and now other passengers apparently have guns, and they've come up behind the conductor and they shoot. Wait a minute. After the shooting was over, investigators showed that the Negro had been hit 3 times, and each wound was made by a different caliber bullet. Apparently you had to have a gun to ride a streetcar in Birmingham.
Sounds like it. And any of the wounds would have been fatal. This is the one I was talking about a while ago. It was Morgan's Pharmacy, which was still around until not too long ago, where the woman went into the pharmacy and shot herself through the head, dying 5 minutes later with that. Oh, she said, "Jesus, I've done all I could." And then she shot herself. Huh.
We look at the past, we think of the past, I think we always think of those times as being better as they were, but there are a lot of people just as stressed and lost and hopeless as I guess we think people are today.
But you know, they didn't have the help that we have now.
That's true. You know, you're kind of an expert on mysterious death now. If you're looking for a sidelight or, you know, another career, if the writing thing doesn't work out, Anne, you might want to keep something like this in mind.
Right, running for coroner. Yeah, just my thing. You've read my books. I'd be no coroner.
Ann George, the cozy coroner.
The cozy coroner. Yeah, dead men tell no tale, but they do.
Thanks, this has been fun.
It's been fun for me. I appreciate you bringing me home here.
Former librarians can go home again. If you've lost your way, visit the Rucker AG Map Collection. These maps date from the 1500s, and what they lack in accuracy, they make up for in beauty and imagination.
So the focus of the collection is on the southeastern United States and Alabama in particular. And I think the AG collection is one of the finest collections for the southeastern United States that you'll find.
Not everyone's browsing like us. Writers, editors, and researchers use this facility. In 1998, about 71,000 people from every state and 6 foreign countries came to Linn-Henley. Every day, 30 to 40 people kind of move into the main reading room. Most of them are interested in genealogy. Jonathan Bass discovered this library long before beginning his civil rights movement research. He first came here as a child with his grandfather to explore his family's roots.
There was a woman by the name of Mary Gordon Duffy who apparently before the Civil War had traveled around Jefferson County and visited with a variety of folks that lived here. And she happened to stop in on the farm where my great-great-grandfather, on 2 sides of my family. And it was really interesting. I couldn't believe how history came alive. It wasn't just a name in a census record. Here was somebody that had actually stopped and had driven a wagon and had stopped and talked with my great-great-grandfather, talked about what his personality was like, what he looked like. Said he was a portly gentleman with a scraggly facial hair, and it really made, we didn't have any pictures of him, and it just really made the history come alive for me. It was so exciting. And I guess that was probably one of the reasons I got so interested in history and get excited even today about finding new stuff and finding documents like that.
People outside of Alabama know more about us and this collection than the people that live right here in Birmingham.
They see it as a real treasure then?
Yes. We're considered a gold mine, as it were, to the genealogists that come in.
Linn-Henley could also be a gold mine if you're studying an Alabama business or industry. Howard Johnson is working on a history of African American funeral homes.
Well, we're using periodicals, newspapers, come to the library and look in journals and books, city directories, whatever that can give us some information.
There's Dr. Parker there in the center there. But there are a lot of jewels over here in the Archives Division. I learned about the Archives Division.
The archive also has hundreds of thousands of photographs. Robert Dawson and Henry DeBartoleben supervise a crew shooting photos for a documentary about the strong marching band tradition at historically black universities and colleges.
We have just found a wealth of information here that we thought we were going to have to travel halfway across the country to find or locate. But we came here and it's all in this one place. It's really a godsend to have this facility here in Birmingham.
One of the most outstanding collections of photographs here provides a visual record of the growth of Birmingham when it was a young, vibrant industrial city. O.V. Hunt was a commercial photographer who made thousands of pictures at local businesses and industries. We asked photo historian Frances Robb to pick out some favorites. What's this photograph tell you about Hunt and about Birmingham?
Well, what it tells me about Hunt was he was a pretty young and pretty daring fellow about this time. He was actually 31 years old. He'd come to Birmingham as a boy of 19 from a very small Georgia town, obviously attracted by the economic potential and obviously by the bustle and hum of a big city. Birmingham was transforming itself rapidly at this time. There were people pouring into the city from all over the place, all over the world actually. And Hunt was part of that great migration of people who wanted to find themselves in the city. But I see him here in his hat, his pork pie hat, and his celluloid collar and his tie, and his shirt sleeves, as a person who's really on the move, active. And again, that's the picture he conveys of Birmingham as well in his photographs. But to wrestle that huge, heavy camera, expensive too, on top of that I-beam, and then hover there to take his picture poised above the city of Birmingham and about 12 stories up from the ground, tells me he's a pretty brave character, pretty cool. And I think that's the image he liked to convey of a cool cat who really understood how the city hummed and was available at any time, night or day, to take pictures of it. Hunt's activities took him all over Jefferson County and even further afield. But in particular, I'm impressed by the pictures that he took of miners at the mines. This is Sipsey Mine, not far from Birmingham, and certainly a vivid reminder when you look at this area of coal strata around the entrance to the mine, that Birmingham was built in an area where coal was plentiful and the limestone and the iron ore were there in place to create a big industrial city. And I think it's important to remember Birmingham's industrial roots because they make it very different from cities like Atlanta with its white-collar insurance businesses and educational infrastructure. This town started out as a real gritty type of place. But because of that, there was opportunity for people like these black fellows who were standing in front of the mine openings. This one is really interesting. Let's see, is there some way maybe I could hold my finger on it. This is another view of what people used to call Black Birmingham. Birmingham had a thriving African-American business district from the early 20th century right on into the 1940s and 50s on 4th Avenue, and Tom's real shine was probably on or very near 4th Avenue. And what you get to see here, I think, is business people presenting themselves at their absolute best. This is, again, a real optimism picture. We're on our way up, and the fellows in the fancy suits with the vests that match and their hats, and this young fellow at the right who's going to actually do the shoe shining in his totally immaculate outfit. You know that's not going to last very long. But this kind of picture presents an ideal of how people wanted their businesses to be. It doesn't necessarily present the dirty actuality at 5 or 6 in the evening after everyone was dirty from the day.
How important resources is this library for people interested not only in photography but in history and what those photographs can tell them about Alabama?
This is a major collection. It's a major national collection, and it has a lot of international users as well. Anyone who wants to understand the growth of an industrial city like Birmingham, you have to come here. There's nowhere else you can get this sort of information. No way you could get it on the internet.
Ah, the internet. Will it one day replace this facility? Will we be just virtual browsers looking at photographs and documents on a computer screen?
You're talking about tens of millions of documents and hundreds of thousands of photographs. Our philosophy now is to use the internet to give information about the collections. You can look at a document on a screen, but that's not the same as holding it in your hand. And you know, there is something about holding a letter that Bull Connor wrote and signed that there's really nothing tangible you can take away from that, I don't guess. But it gives you a connection and it gives you a feel for your research that you're not going to get any other way.
Odd to think about a sense of touch mattering in a library, but this library has made an impression on thousands of people, and thousands of people have made their impression on this library. You can see it here. Seems like every Alabama school kid who visits can't resist touching home. This library is kind of a home for writer Dennis Covington. Dennis, I've heard a story about a personal milestone that you celebrated here. I want you to tell that story to us.
Right, Brad. Well, I grew up in Eastlake, and when I was a kid, I used to ride my bicycle to the branch of the Birmingham Public Library in Eastlake. When I finally got my driver's license, the very first place I came was downtown to this beautiful building.
That's because it's a special place. I guess you recognize that even as a teenager.
Oh, for me it was a marvel. It was an oasis. It had books by the Russian novelists. It had books about science, natural science, and geography, and everything. It was a treasure for me.
Well, there's some talk about libraries being replaced by websites, that we'd visit them virtually, but the sense is here that they're always going to be here and we're always going to be able to touch these documents and see the photographs and books, and from what I can tell, that suits most people just fine.
I think it's very important that this place be here for people to escape from the world outside and to touch the wood and take the books off the shelves, thumb through the pages, and immerse themselves in the knowledge that's contained here.
Videotape copies of this program may be purchased by calling 1-800-463-8825. Learn more about this and other programs from the Alabama Experience on the World Wide Web at www.alabamatv.org.